Hello again, friends. It's a sweltering hot day here in Northern Virginia, but I wanted to share something that happened last night. So this is a podcast, but it's kind of unusual in the sense that I'm just kind of winging it because I want to share this with you. Two things happened last night. I have this friend that I've mentioned in other podcasts. I'm going to refer to her as RM, or the reluctant medium. But have you ever wondered, kind of to set this up, have you ever wondered what you would ask somebody in spirit? You know, some of the big questions about life and what life is like for them after they die. And I have no doubt now that my son, for example, is always with me, always around, sees what's happening, is able to participate and comment on things that are actually happening every day. But last night, RM called me and she said, "Do you have any questions for Matt?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "He's here." So for some reason, Matt came through last night, and I said, "Yeah, I'd love to ask him a bunch of questions. First of all, is he still in life review? Because he's described that he's been in life review." She said, "Yes, he's still in life review." I said, "Okay, ask him if there's a purgatory." Right? I'm Catholic, was raised Catholic anyway, and I've done some podcasts about purgatory. So I said, "Ask him if there's a purgatory." And he said, "Purgatory is really what's called life review. Purgatory is part of life review." And so my understanding of purgatory as a Catholic is that it's a purification process that you go through, meaning that there's, I don't know, not physical fire, but there's some type of pain or punishment that you go through to be purified to be with God, right? Matt said that life review is very difficult and that you have to answer for all of your decisions in life. And he said it's not painful in the sense of where you experience any kind of physical pain, because they don't have a body, obviously, but he said it's painful in the sense of answering for what you did and what other people felt. So to me, that was profound. You know, maybe the church, Catholic Church, calls it purgatory, but that's kind of what it is. So then I said, the other big question, I said, ask him if there's a hell. And he said, hell and purgatory are part of the same life review process. Now, what I didn't ask him, and when he comes back, I got all this list of questions I want to ask him. What I didn't ask him was, so is hell permanent or like a temporary thing that you're going through as part of the life review process? But apparently this whole life review thing is not trivial. There's another friend I have in spirit who's also come through that said the same thing, that he was in life review. And I've had a number of other spiritual contacts that have used the exact same term, life review. So anyway, that was one of the profound things that I want to ask Matt about purgatory and about hell. And then I also asked him, is there time in spirit? And he said that there is time, right? How many times have you heard there is no time outside of this world, that everything here is an illusion, time and space is an illusion? He said there is time. He showed RM a picture of clocks, the face of a clock with hands on it, but multiple clocks like moving around in a circle. He was trying to convey something. I didn't understand what he was saying, but he said there is time. It's just different than we understand it. He also said there is a God, and I didn't ask him that question. When he was talking to me about a life review, he said there is a God, but not like we understand it here in this life on earth. So I also said, have you met Jesus Christ? How many times have we learned, you know, that when we die, we're going to be in the arms of Jesus, or we're going to go, if we believe in Christ as a personal Savior, that will be in the arms of Jesus like as soon as we die. Now, Matt, I don't know where he was spiritually when he died. As I mentioned before, he had a very difficult last couple of years of his life. But he said he has not seen Jesus Christ yet, and that he can't do that until he completes life review. Now, I find that really interesting, because our understanding as Catholics of purgatory is that you're not with God until you go through purgatory first, and then once you're cleansed or whatever, then you're with God, with Jesus Christ. So in a weird way, that tracks. Anyway, he said he can't see Jesus until he completes life review. I asked him about past lives. Do you come back? Is there such a thing as reincarnation? And he said yes. Once you go through life review, then you can start, I forget the phrase he used, but you can come back to this earth with a different husk. And he used the term husk, H-U-S-K. I never heard that before, but that's the term he used. You can come back with a different husk. I asked him if he and I had past lives together. He said yes. I asked him for more details about that, but he said he can't tell me until he's done with his life review. So those were pretty much the main things of the session last night. Matt has come through before. You know, this whole thing started with the orb experience. The whole reason I wrote my book, the whole reason I'm involved with the orbs is because of Matt. He comments all the time on things that he sees. If I'm doing something or I did something the day before, he might say, I saw you doing this or I saw you doing that. The interesting thing about my discussion with RM last night was I wasn't talking to her. I was asking the question, and she told me this later, but she said he was not, she didn't have to relay the questions to him. He heard me ask the question and he was answering it right away through her. So I've seen a podcast, I think it's called Hacking the Afterlife or something, where they do that. You know, the host sits here and he's got a medium in another screen and he's talking to Abraham Lincoln or George Washington, whatever, and they're answering through the medium. This wasn't that dramatic. You know, this is my son, of course. It was very special to me, but I was asking him questions and he was answering through her. And one final thing he showed her was he was trying to describe what the life review is like. And I said, I've heard different descriptions through other things I've read or heard, that life review is witnessed by thousands, millions of souls that are taking part of that. Sorry about that noise. Life review is witnessed by thousands of people or millions of souls. He said that, I think Matt misunderstood my question, but because he said that we all go through life review, but it's all individual. Like he's not watching somebody else's life review, he's gone through his own. So I'm going to try to get more clarity on that. We talk again. I put together this list of questions I want to ask him. You know, like, do babies that die through abortion or that die young, do they have to go through a life review? And why do they do that? Why does God permit that? And hopefully he'll have that knowledge or that vision to see those kind of things once he graduates from life review. And then what happens after life review? Is he still available to come visit me, or where does he go after that? He has mentioned there are different levels or different dimensions. He's used the term dimension before. So all this just blows me away. You know, what would you do if you had somebody that came to visit you in spirit and you could ask these kind of questions? Now, I know there's people out there that might say, hey, this is all from Satan. You know, I don't know what to say to that. You know, you believe in prophets. You believe in, you know, the Bible has people talking to God. I see this kind of the same way. For some reason, God permits this to happen for me through Matt, and I'm anxious to learn as much as I can. So that's the first thing that happened last night with RM. So Matt faded away. I'm sure he'll come back. I'll ask him a lot more questions about this kind of thing, and I'll share with you, because I think that's what I'm supposed to do. But what happened next was a little more different. So RM said to me, I'm starting to get a child energy. It's a child. I said, okay. I was trying to think of what children I knew that were in spirit. She said, it's not related to you. Okay. His name is Kellen, like K-E-L-L-E-N. And I said, okay, what's he doing? She goes, he was killed in an accident, and he was only 6 years old. So she's had a couple experiences where people have come through that I was able to verify, actually, on the internet, real people. I'll share that later some other time. But Kellen was killed in an accident, and she said he's waiting for his parents. He's stuck. And I said, what does that mean? She goes, he's waiting. He doesn't want to go. And she said, I could see an angel standing there with him. And Kellen is telling me that the angel wants him to go with her. The angel looked like a woman. The angel wants him to go with her, but Kellen is afraid he'll miss his, I used the word mama and dada. He didn't want to miss mama and dada, and he was waiting for them. Now, Kellen has apparently been waiting for well over 100 years, because he started showing pictures of how he died to RM, and she saw wagons, like big wagon wheels, and he also showed her a picture of like a Model T Ford, but he was killed by a wagon. So it must have been the turn of the century, and she tried to get his last name, began with a P, but she was having trouble pronouncing it. So it's Kellen P something. But he said he was in Philadelphia, and they were outside of a church on a busy city street, and this all came through images and him telling her he was in a wagon. His parents told him to stay in their wagon, but he saw young boys playing marbles on the street. And RM said to me, she goes, what's an Aggie? And the first thing I thought of was Texas A&M. I said, I don't know, what's an Aggie? She goes, I think it's a type of marble. He said he went to see a cloudy Aggie, and it has something to do with boys shooting marbles. And I've looked that up since, and it's a thing, and it's vocabulary that would have been used at maybe the turn of the century with young boys shooting marbles. So Kellen saw these boys shooting marbles, wanted to see a cloudy Aggie, I guess, and he jumped off the wagon to look at that, and he was run over by another wagon. And RM said to me his neck was broken. I said, how do you know that? She said, because I can feel the weight of the wheel going across my upper chest. And she goes, it's pressing down, and his head's off at a strange angle. He's showing me his body on the ground. And I had been with other mediums. You know, when I was writing my book, I went to a bunch of mediums, and a couple of them would get impressions of how Matt passed and where Matt's pain was. And one of them specifically said to Matt, she said, show me where the pain was, but don't give me the pain. Just let me know where it was. And so I said to RM, I said, you can just ask to know where the pain is. Don't tell me you don't want to feel the pain. Tell spirit you don't want the pain. You just want to know where it was. And she said that, and then she said the pain went away, but she could still tell where the wagon wheel was crossing Kellen's neck. So I said, what are you supposed to do? Why is he telling you this? And she said they were at a church, and he jumped off and he died, but he won't leave with the angel. Now the angel wasn't talking to RM. The angel was talking, to Kellen. I said, why don't you tell him that his parents are probably wherever the angel wants to take him? She said, I've been telling him that. That's what I didn't hear her say this, but she said, I've been telling him that. Go with the angel. That's where your parents are. Go with the angel. And then she said, he's showing me pictures of his parents. And she described a woman in a period dress, like from the late 1800s, 1900s, and a man dressed in a white shirt with large buttons and a black bow tie, kind of not like you tie like a bow, a thin bow with things coming down. And she described the parents. I said, no facial hair for the father. I said, why is he showing you that? She said, because I agreed with him that if he would go with the angel, I would look out for his parents. And if I saw his parents, I would tell them where he went. And so the last thing she saw of Kellen was the angel holding his little hand and walking into this light. And she said that Kellen was walking and the angel was gliding. The angel wasn't really touching whatever the ground was. So that was pretty profound. And I think that she helped this soul hopefully move to the light and move to where his parents were. But he made her promise that she would watch out for Mama and Dada and tell them where he went if they showed up. So that was, I haven't looked up anything yet. If any of you out there are real newspaper sleuths and can find anything about that. Kellen, she thinks his middle name was Jacob, in Philadelphia, late 1800s, early 1900s, killed by a wagon on a city street. She said when she saw him laying on the street, it was a dirt street, but was in the city. So there was a lot of people around, especially after he was hit. That's pretty much it. So I just felt compelled today to share this with you. I don't know why this is happening. I hope to ask more questions. I know there's people out there that have written books about this, where they've talked with their son in spirit or their mother in spirit, and they've explained what it's like, but it's never happened to me before. So I wanted to share it with you, and I'll share more as I get more questions answered, and maybe I'll talk about this other incident that she brought up, that RM brought up. A spirit came through, but it affects people that are still alive, and I don't want to discuss that till I know more, till that spirit comes back. All right, thank you for listening. Appreciate you hanging in there if you've listened this long. My book, The Soul Unleashed, is where I describe how I got to this point. You know, I would have thought I was a complete nut job. If I was me, looking 10 years ago, looking at me now, I think I was a complete nut job, so I get it. But thanks for listening. Bye-bye. Hey, this is just a quick postscript here before I drive off, because I had a couple thoughts. You know, I'm doing this, like I said, off the cuff, and so there's a couple things I forgot to mention. Two things about Matt that he said last night that I forgot. One is, you know, I was concerned about him getting a new husk and coming back to this life, returning to Earth, before I got there to see him. And so I said, will you still be there when I die, you know, to greet me? Or will you have returned to Earth? And he said, I can be both places at the same time. I can be many places at the same time. So I can be with you. I can be with his nieces and nephew. I can be with his brother. So I can be multiple places, and I'll be here when you get here. So that was reassuring. And he also described the Afterlife review as using a Viewmaster. So for those of you old enough to remember what a Viewmaster was, it was one of those red things that you look through that had a little lever on the side. And he showed RM an actual picture of a Viewmaster. And he said that, you know, it's like clicking the lever on the Viewmaster and it goes to the next scene. And that's how they're moving through his life for the review part. So that was pretty interesting. And then just one additional thing about RM's experience with Kellen, the little boy who was hit by a wagon. I didn't describe the angel very much. I asked her for a specific description of the angel, right? Because that's pretty amazing. And she described the angel as feminine, with long blonde hair and like a gossamer white gown or dress with folds in it. But it was all moving. She was floating, like stationary, but it was all moving. Yes, she had wings, and she had a blue sash, and so and all that light behind her. So that was RM's description of what the angel looked like. And like I said, once Kellen agreed to move on, the angel took Kellen's little hand and then led him into the light. So just a couple additional thoughts I had. Wanted to share those with you. Thanks again. Bye-bye.